Well, I think the first point to make is that we shouldn't be shocked. We shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be dismayed. Least of all should we feel resentful, because after all, Buddha already described this in the first of the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering that we can experience. And one of those, of course, is sickness. After all, the litany runs birth, old age, sickness, and death. So it's just the natural course of things. We've been born into this world. We've been born into this body, due to karma, actually, of course, due to our own kind of drives from the past. So there's nobody to blame. We're not to blame ourselves in the sense of, oh, I must have done some evil thing 1 year ago and therefore I'm now sick. It's just the long-term outcome of past drives and past kind of lives that we're in this body, and therefore it falls to pieces. After all phenomena that are conditioned, that come together through causing conditions, start to disintegrate the moment they come together, as Buddha has told us. So sickness is just kind of part of that, part and parcel of being alive. The beauties and joys of being alive come with that kind of price tag of disintegration, of change, disintegration, and finally death. And sickness, therefore, is just one very obvious manifestation of that. So no need to be shocked, no need to be, as I say, and no need to look around for somebody to curse for it, like an unforgiving God or a malevolent devil. Or it's just that. It just happens. I'm in this body, and this body is constantly mutating and changing. And sometimes it makes me feel ill, makes me feel sick. So that's the first thing, a kind of equanimity, a kind of resilience through equanimity, just accepting the natural world that is samsara right now for us. But we could do more with it too. We could do a lot more with it. First of all, we can draw the conclusion that actually we're not in charge. Maybe we've been kind of harboring a fantasy, perhaps acknowledged or unacknowledged, that in a way we're the ones that are going to defy the natural rules. We're the ones that are not going to get sick. We're the ones that are not going to age. We're the ones that are not even going to die. That somehow we have a kind of immunity, or somehow we live in a bubble that's separate. But we don't. We live in the natural world. So that bubble we've been kind of creating for ourselves is in a way an expression of our ego, of our clinging to ego, clinging to the idea of a permanent, autonomous, independent self, who is in a way inviolable to the kind of laws of nature, to the laws of, samsara. But here we are, we're not. So that's a bit of a takedown for ego's conceit, for ego's pride. Let's accept it gracefully. And in that way, tune into the way the world is. Learn some wisdom, the wisdom that we're not in control, we're not the boss, we're not the God, we don't control things. Actually, in that way, a whole load of tension and unhappiness will go, because we don't have to fight against the evidence of our senses, the evidence of the world any longer. We can accept it for what it is. And that with this acceptance comes, I say, a deflation of tension, a letting out of struggle, and a kind of, the happiness from relaxation. But we can go even further. We can go further in this way. This suffering that I may be experiencing through this sickness, be it a tiny headache, be it jet lag, be it something really quite crippling, maybe even fatal, am I the only person in the world to have this? Am I the only person who has ever had this? Isn't it actually the case that there's just a whole bunch, maybe a limitless bunch of beings, humans and others, who are also going through things like this right now? Not just have and will, but maybe even just right now, there's so many others who are going through this thing. And so why should my feeling be so special? Why should my kind of unhappiness at this sickness be the one that I'm concentrating on, be the one that I'm in a way privileging and making first and foremost the center of my attention? Shouldn't I actually go somewhere else with this? Shouldn't I think, well, exactly this fact that I'm suffering, but there's hundreds, countless number of others suffering something very similar maybe to my particular sickness right now, shouldn't that make me open up to their problems, to their difficulties? Shouldn't it make me remember that truth that all beings want happiness just as much as I do. All beings want to avoid suffering just as much as I do. There's nothing unique about my wish for happiness, my wish to avoid suffering. In fact, it's actually in a way unthinkable to put myself first and exclude all the others. We're all in the same boat. We all have the same problem. There's nothing unique about my problem. So if that's the case, then could I also think even like this? Well, this suffering of mine is it's just here, it's happening. Could I not train in this way? May it be a magnet, a kind of magnet that draws other sickness away from them into mine. Maybe if I've got a headache, I remember everybody or other people who might be having a headache now, and perhaps I should generate the intention. It's only a wish, only an intention, but it's going to be very powerful. May other people's headaches come into mine. May my headache right now be like a magnet that draws their headaches into myself, so that they're free from the suffering of the headache. They're liberated from that. But then one might think, oh, but that's unbearable. My headache's bad enough as it is. Do I want a billion other headaches coming into mine? But actually, if you try that, you just try this exercise, this way of thinking, this way of relating to your sickness, you'll find something amazing. Actually, your pain does not increase. Because so much of our pain, beyond the mere physical disturbance, is our emotional tension and reaction to it. That kind of tightening up and in resistance to it. That emotional discomfort is so big. But in this, you cut through the emotional discomfort by just thinking of others. There's a generosity and openness that comes about through using your sickness to bring others' sickness into yourself. And you actually end up being much more liberated, being, dare I say, even somewhat happy through this practice of taking the suffering of others into yourself. We call this exchanging yourself for others in the classical Buddhist teaching. And in fact, as it said by one great master, it's not just that Buddhahood will arise through such a sublime, virtuous practice, but even happiness in this life comes from it. Because as I say, all your kind of self-defensive and aggressive negativity that you usually react with to discomfort and trouble is just evaporated, just dries up. And in its place, a sense of capability, a sense of power, a sense of freedom, because you're engaging beyond yourself. You're stepping out of the narrow bonds of self-centeredness in reacting to others with loving kindness and compassion. And the result of that is actually joy for you, as well as you strengthening your bodhisattva practice. So if you can try this, first, don't be shocked. Secondly, remember, this is just an illustration of Buddhist teachings that we're not in charge. The mythical ego, the mythical boss, he's not there. And then out of that can come this consideration of others. Use your difficulties as a way to lock into the troubles and difficulties of others. Going even as far as this wish to take the difficulties of others onto yourself. And the upshot of this is actually joyfulness. Free from the martyred kind of tortured neurosis of feeling sorry for yourself is a kind of joyfulness. That's what we should try.